All right, good afternoon. My name is Pam, and I'm here today with Marion Owen. Hi, Marion.
Hey, good afternoon, Pam.
How you doing?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
It is. We are here today to talk about how and when to put your garden to bed and what you can be doing this fall to get ready for next spring and a successful garden next year. And Marion's been a master gardener for, do we want to say how long?
No, but I have been writing my gardening column for I think 25 years. Every Monday.
All right. So, and you've been gardening here in Kodiak. I think that's kind of important for people to know that not only are you a master gardener, but you are a master gardener here in Kodiak. And you've been gardening here for decades now.
Right, almost 40 years. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of experience with all kinds of garden items and all sorts of seasons and things like, rainy, wet, early summers and relatively dry August, which August is often dry anyway, but it was really kind of dry this year, it seemed like. Maybe it was just because we were comparing it to the previous 3 or 4 months.
Well, it certainly seems dry compared to what the interior, even Kenai Peninsula, they're looking at flooding right now.
I know, and they've been getting a ton of rain throughout the summer.
Which is a total flip-flop from what, normally we're wet and they're dry, influenced by the interior. But, hey, we'll make the best of it. So, yeah, we can talk dirt.
We can talk dirt. Good.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's not just a one and done. So as you see, say, annuals fade to nothing, then go ahead and pull them out. As weeds creep into your life a little bit, pull them out, especially the perennial weeds. Grasses creeping into your raised beds. If you want your calendulas, for example, to last longer, then keep on pinching off those faded blooms.
Yep.
Or that kind of thing. If the perennials are done, like your tall delphiniums, cut them back. If your chives have faded, though I kind of doubt it, they kind of live forever.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So there's some things you can just go ahead and weed around them. Things like parsley, for example, they won't survive the winter, but at some point you're going to want to cut them down to a couple inches and just at least harvest before they all start fading. And I'm like you. I love to look at changing colors in plants. I mean, fireweed for one thing. So just kind of keep in touch. Keep doing your garden trap line and see what you can do.
So a question about primroses. Several of our primrose varieties here put out a fairly tall flower stalk. And do you just cut those all the way back when fall hits and everything is done there?
I do. I cut them down. You might notice that when the primroses are done blooming in spring and early summer, man, they send out ginormous leaves, like sometimes 5 times bigger than the original plant. And that's all about photosynthesis and getting food, into the plant. At the same time, those flower stalks, yes, you can just cut them off.
Okay.
And you never know. They might make a really cool dried arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah.
We did that just recently. All my onions bolted this year, so we might as well talk about.
Let's talk about that because a lot of people had tons of vegetation that just bolted.
A plant will go and bolt when it's stressed. It just says, "I'm out of here. I can't handle the conditions." And the comparison for me is okay. So, and I heard this from a lot of people. Onions look great in the beginning of the season. So did kale, Brussels sprouts. These are things growing outside right now. And come, July, my onions sent up these giant flower stalks. Some are 3 feet tall. I thought I got them all, but they just kept coming in all the different plants. So what I did was I cut off the scapes, the flower stalks, and chopped up a lot of them into rings, put them in Ziploc bags, and I froze them. Now the very tippy tops where the blossom is a little bud, I left about 18 inches with the bud on top. They're kind of tough. And I put them in a flower vase. It's the most amazing. It kind of looks like the Jetsons. Like they might have that kind of a flower arrangement. So there's a lot of things you can do. Just experiment with. Put them, dry them, turn them upside down. Are they edible? Put them in the freezer. When I say dry them, and you can do it for a flower arrangement, or put them in the dehydrator. Just see, just experiment. So on the topic of herbs, another thing would be if you grow thyme, oregano, and herbs like that, they're kind of woody, then cut them back to 3-4 inches. And then they're going to come back with, very robust in the spring.
Yeah. And when you're wintering over your herbs like that, are you wintering them over on your windowsill? Are you wintering them over in your greenhouse? Are you, are these potted plants, or do you have them growing in beds in your greenhouse or hoop house?
I don't do a lot of perennials, herbs or otherwise, in my hoop house and greenhouse. Sometimes I'll bring in a pot into my greenhouse just to see how they do. I'm experimenting all the time. But as far as my thyme and oregano, sage, they're all outside in pots. Okay. And sometimes I cover them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll just pull them out of the strong nor'easters to get them out of the brunt of it. But if they can't make it, I'm not going to baby them along. Okay. In many cases.
Okay. Yeah. So you just cut them back.
Cut them back.
Let them go.
And and they have such a strong root system by this point that even though it looks like they're dying back in the winter, they'll come back just fine. Yeah.
Interesting. So as you're putting some of these things away, and you're let's say you have a flower bed that has sort of died off and you've cleaned that out, what are you doing with that soil? Do you just let it go until the spring? Do you do something else with it?
Like in a raised bed?
Yeah.
So if I've cleaned out a raised bed,
or a container,
Right. So one of the things about raised garden beds is, while it's kind of a sexy thing to harvest your kale as long as you can into January, February, you're really inviting big problems like root maggots. Root maggots are one of the top pests in commercially grown crops in the world. There's all kinds of root maggots. There's onion root maggots, and the one that we deal with here are ones that affect the brassica crops, like our cabbage and broccoli and turnips, holy turnips. And so it's a good idea. You can keep growing turnips and Brussels sprouts and so on till the frost, because they kind of sweeten. But when they're done, yank them out, get them out of there, and then you want to mulch or add a layer of compost, like 3 or 4 inches worth. And if you don't have ready-made compost, you can still get very old stable scraps, from stables, right? Manure.
Stable scraps?
Stable scraps.
Okay.
and kelp. For example, one of my favorite types of seaweed is the eelgrass. And it's coming up now in rolls.
Yeah, onto the beach.
Yes, and it's lovely. Or just your smaller kind of Cuisinarted, if that's, would that be a... Anyway, so stuff...
Cuisinarted by nature, as it rolls up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all kinds of kelp that's all chewed up, the high tide mark, and just turn it into your raised beds.
So you actually fold it in, or do you lay it on top like you would a mulch?
You can do either one.
Okay.
Sometimes I just turn it in the top few inches.
Okay.
And maybe that's sort of ringing because I want to ring the dinner bell for the microbes and the worms below, because they actually do. The earthworms actually come up. So if you put a mulch or compost layer, that provides darkness, and so the earthworms will come up into that layer and start pulling it down, and that's what you want to have happen as we sleep over the winter.
And it fertilizes and does all the good stuff then.
It does. And
as it goes down.
Because fall is the best time to get your garden ready for spring. I can't tell you how many times people have come to me kind of panicked it's April or May and they're not ready. They're getting caught with their plants down, right? Sorry. So fall is the time to repair or build new raised beds. Prune your raspberry canes. These are the ones that produced berries this year. Okay. And if you have perennials that need dividing, or maybe a friend gave you a perennial, hey, mine's getting too big, take this. Fall is a great time for dividing plants and transplanting them because the soil is nice and warm, it's kind of fluffy, and there's still enough time for the roots to get nicely established.
Well, that would be my concern. There's still enough time now. It's chilly out there, though, in the evenings now. Are we far from a frost, do you think?
Well, I was kind of wondering the other day, because in the interior they've had some snow. We could be, but a light frost won't hurt anything.
Right. Okay. So, all right, I'll ask an iris question. And I have some of what I understand may be considered an invasive iris, which is the yellow Russian iris variety, but I need to transplant some of them. And I was thinking about waiting until spring, but you're saying I should go ahead and whack them back, I assume, down to a fairly short stalk.
3 to 4 inches.
Yeah.
And you might need a shovel because they're pretty dense.
Yeah.
And just go right through them. And separate your clumps, give them away. Or you could wait till next spring for the KMXT plant sale. Right?
And get more.
Right.
Nice plug there, Marion. Good job. Marion, if you don't know, does a tremendous amount of work for us for a fundraiser for KMXT at a plant sale in the spring, which is wonderful. All right, so we've talked about, other than putting a compost or a mulch layer, a seaweed layer into the top of your beds, are there other things you should be doing with the soil in your bed, in your containers? I don't know. I'm sure it's not just me, but the slugs this year have been just horrible. I only do container gardens, and I've never had the problems I've had this year with slugs.
It was pretty phenomenal. Lots of stories. I've changed my idea about dealing with slugs over the years. It used to be, maybe it still is, standard out there that, you should clean up all the leaves and so on that fall on the soil because it just attracts the slugs. Or you should take off or prune off the lower leaves of your kale because the slugs are getting it. Well, I want that stuff there. It's like sacrificial. So
let them have it.
Let them have it. If I take the lower leaves that are all nice and holy, thanks to the slugs, from my Brussels sprouts, well, guess what? They're just going to climb higher.
Sure.
I mean, this year we saw slugs on the side of our house. Now, what would they be climbing for? The gutters, to get what's in the gutters? Yeah. I don't have any idea. But, it's not the slug's fault. I'm getting a little, I don't know, kind of maybe woo-woo here. But, if we have a problem with a pest, it's our fault, whatever it happens to be. So other things you can do other than mulch and so on is think about what you're going to plant in that bed. Let's say you're getting ready to plant garlic.
For next year.
Right. Mm-hmm. So this is September, particularly like 3rd week to 4th week of September, is the best time for planting the cloves of hard-neck garlic here in Kodiak. It's enough time for the cloves to get established, like the roots, but all of your allium, all of your onion crops are very heavy feeders. So you want to make sure you add plenty of compost and that kind of thing, organic material, where you're going to plant your garlic. On the other hand, where you're going to plant your potatoes next year, you don't want to add a lot of compost. Maybe some kelp and so on, but so think in terms, plan ahead a little bit what you're going to plant, right? And the other thing about planning ahead is it's extremely important to rotate your crops. Practice crop rotation. So don't designate a raised bed as the garlic bed year after year. You will come into problems.
So you're talking mainly about rotating crops of vegetables and root vegetables and things like that.
Right.
Not necessarily flowers. You don't rotate a crop of iris versus calendulas.
No, because iris being a bulb, calendulas, I kind of plant flowers all throughout all my raised beds just for fun, right? As for perennial beds, now that's different. You want to mulch, but not a high nitrogen mulch at this point. It could be just shredded leaves or just a gentle blend of something, or leaves plus kelp, which is ideal. And then place the mulch around your perennials, be it rhododendrons or, all of those, not right up against the trunk. You want to keep it, like a good, like around the drip line, if you draw a line. So that's what you want to do.
Okay. And same thing with perennials such as, I just drew a blank. What were we just talking about? The flowers, the primroses and things like that. Do you mulch around those as well?
I don't do a big layer around primroses. They're pretty hardy.
They
in
are
all
very
ways.
hardy, yeah.
But Marie Skomberg, who was one of the primrose queens of the world in Uzinki, she actually had a little change of heart too. She at the very least, she would put spruce branches over her primroses.
Oh, over the entire bed?
She just would put them over her primroses, and that would be enough of a protection, but allow for air circulation and moisture to get in there. So it didn't cause a rotting problem. The garden club back in the day would experiment with putting straw out or spruce branches or compost. The worst one was the straw.
Yeah, I bet.
It just rotted.
Yeah.
And caused the plants underneath to rot too.
Yeah, that's not necessarily good bed material. Might be good bed material for your horse.
For your horse, right, right.
Or hay. All right, so, well, that's interesting. Spruce branches would serve as a good insulator, I assume, then, too, as the frost comes in and the snow comes in. All right, so once again, I'm going to talk about planting things like bulb flowers, crocus, tulips, daffodils, that kind of thing. You were just talking about planting your garlic in 3 to 4 weeks, right? Or the 3rd or 4th week of September. When would you think about planting some of your floral bulb?
Samo.
Okay.
Yeah. Plant your spring bulbs about the same time.
Okay.
Up into about mid-October. Watch the weather.
Right. If it's going to be a hard freeze, you're too late.
Hard, because, I've known people in the past that had to plant their spring bulbs with a pickaxe.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they waited till late October, early November.
Ouch.
And you don't need to have a bulb food. No, because the bulb contains the initial food that it needs.
Really? So you don't need to you just have good fluffy soil.
Good
to
fluffy
put it
soil, put a little compost in. That's it. You don't need bulb food.
in. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a sales gimmick. Totally.
Good to know.
If you have a lawn and you want to have a little fun, take a trowel, dig a little hole, and put a crocus bulb in there.
Right.
Yeah. And when you plant your bulbs, it's aesthetically more pleasing if you plant them in clumps versus one over here and one over there, and
Yeah, I always read the instructions. I read the instructions. I never follow them, but I read the instructions on all these things about plant them 12, inches apart or whatever the thing is. And it's like, nah, I cram my stuff together. All my flowers, my nasturtiums, all that stuff. It's just much more closely planted than recommended. Doesn't seem to do cause them any problems. So
now you plant in a lot of containers. You
Yeah.
grow in a lot of containers. And this is a good time to check on those plants.
Yeah.
I have currants and other plants in pots like that. And after a while, the honeymoon's over.
you need to move them on.
You
to
need to
something
move them
else.
on. You need to divide them. Something.
Yeah.
So just check on them. If you knock on the soil and knocks back, they're gonna suffer. And you can tell. They'll tell you.
Well, all right. So rhododendron or an azalea that's been growing in a container, and you need to move it to a larger container or to just
put it in the ground.
put it in the ground, whatever your choice may be. Is fall the time to do that?
It could be a very good time to do that.
Rather than wait till spring.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So a rhododendron, it's a shallow rooted shrub, and you can actually, if it's possible, lean the container over and slip the plant out if you can, or just tilt it enough to see if there's roots coming out of the bottom. If it's suffering, it just hasn't been bloomed much lately. The leaves are turning brown. Then it's probably time to plant it into something else. I know some people who start rhubarb and they keep it in a halibut tub for a while, but that's great. But a rhubarb plant left to its own devices in really good soil, those roots can be 4 to 5 feet deep.
Oh yeah,
They're enormous.
it is a prolific plant as
It is.
well.
Yep.
Okay,
Which reminds me, by the way, if you have a rhubarb crop, you can even divide those now, but mulch over it with some sort of compost. It just, or old manure. Just it'll take anything you throw at it.
Okay. So we have a rhubarb plant out front that unfortunately has not maintained. We have not maintained fresh dirt around it. The grasses have grown just right up against it. And I'm debating about how to deal with that. What would you recommend?
I think if it were me, Pam, I would dig up the rhubarb, just go chunk around, circle around it with a shovel, and get it out and stick it in a bucket of water. And then let it soak for a while and see how much grass you can get out of it. Rhubarb roots are actually a beautiful butterscotch yellow. And Chinese, they use the rhubarb root. They could give a rip about the tops. It's for Chinese medicine, it's the root.
Interesting.
So it's not like you're going to have, say, horseradish root and the perennial grasses are going to be intertwined. It should be fairly easy to pull those clumps of grass out of there once it's really wet and soaked.
Okay.
And then put it somewhere like a raised bed that doesn't have grass around it, or put it in a halibut tub for the winter, and then figure something out for the spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we haven't talked. We were talking a little bit about planting trees and shrubs. So you're talking about transplanting trees and shrubs, but this is also a good time if you're buying a new shrub or you're buying a new tree. That always amazed me. Plant a tree in the fall. It's like, really? What if you already have a tree that has started to yellow and is going dormant for the winter? Do you plant it now or do you wait and plant again in the spring?
If it's something you really need to move, let's say you're going to expand your driveway or who knows what, I would go ahead and transplant it now.
Okay.
You'd be putting it in soil that's not high nitrogen, like fruit tree or anything. You don't want to be adding high nitrogen right now and tell them, let's grow, On the other hand, there's very new research science going on right now. When I was growing up, when you got a tree, you were transplanting a tree, be it a maple or a cherry, that you dug the hole and they put all kinds of rich stuff in it. Then
And
you put the
lots of
tree
water.
in. And lots of water.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The roots are just going to stay contained in that hole going, well, this is really nice food. I'm not going to send out any roots beyond this. This is great. Because beyond that, I sampled it. There's not much there. So you've kind of made your own little container. So now the rule of thumb is just put it in the hole and fill it full of your local soil. And if you're going to dress or add some sort of compost or material like that, then put it on top, and it'll reach for it.
It will. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. All right. So we've talked quite a bit about compost, and we have just a few minutes left. But we haven't talked about how do you get a compost pile going? Is this a good time of year to get a compost pile going? And what about bears?
A good question. How to compost in bear country. First of all, a compost pile is not a garbage pile.
Right.
So if you're just putting your trash, be it your food scraps with leaves in a heap in the corner of your yard, That's ringing the dinner bell. If you want to keep the bears away, is you're going to build a hot compost pile. I mean, I'm talking about you build your pile all at once in a bin, and you turn it about every 3 days, and it'll get up in day two, and I've done this just a couple weeks ago. It'll get up to 150 degrees.
Whoa.
Not only will you kill weed seeds, but you're not going to have putrefaction of your food scraps. It's not going to smell.
So how do you get it that hot in 3 days?
You get lots of materials. We're blessed with a lot of materials like leaves, grass clippings, food scraps, manure from the mission or from out in the fairgrounds, kelp, fish meal, all of that. And you just mix it all together all at once. Don't do dribs and drabs. Then it's not going to get hot. It has to have enough mass, like 3 by 3 by 3 feet, in order to heat up the core. And it will do that. And I'll be covering compost in my garden columns coming up because this is the best time of year. The best.
To get it going. So you get your compost pile going, it gets hot, and then you're ready to start using your compost, right?
In about 6 weeks, it'll be done.
Okay.
Which is amazing. Now, if you want to put food scraps in your compost pile, right, dig a deep hole, or as you turn it, put it deep, and you won't have any smell. You know, but don't put any meat and chicken bones and stuff like that in there. You know,
eggshells are okay though.
Eggshells are all right. But you know, if you're right in the bear territory, then don't even put fish bones and scraps in there. I don't.
Right.
If you have food scraps, like vegetable material, like you know, tea bags and coffee grounds, I bury it in my garden. I dig a hole and I bury it, and it just breaks down.
Huh. And that doesn't tempt a bear.
No, not lettuce and
things like that.
Coffee grounds.
Yeah. So
no.
you're just
No.
and you just bury it in the garden and let it become food there.
Yep.
Interesting. So we have about 1 minute left. How would you like to wrap this up? Do you have any last minute thoughts or reminders for people?
I would say reminders if you have fuchsias, geraniums, and begonias outside. In the next few weeks, it's time to deal with them. Bring them in, store them over the winter, give them away, start new, you know, just stay in touch
So
with
when
it.
you bring them in and you store them over the winter, what are you doing with them? Are you putting them in a dark closet?
Yep.
Are you...
No, cool and dark is good.
Okay.
Cool and dark.
Cut them back, cool and dark.
Cool and dark.
Okay. All right. Marion, I wanted to thank you very much for coming in and talking with us today.
My pleasure.
It's always good to talk to you about all kinds of things gardening. And as Marion mentioned, if you watch for her column in the Kodiak Daily Mirror, she will be talking about compost in detail in the next few weeks.
And container plants.
And container plants. Good.